Hey guys, it's Waifugate here. We're going to be doing a set review of Ikoria. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but it's the new Magic set for Magic coming out very soon. We've got an early access event for tomorrow, so I figured I'd take a moment and sort of do a card review for each of these. I'm going to be going from left to right here on the color panel. We should get through all the cards within like an hour or two, hoping that it's not too long. You guys probably know me from Twitch, maybe. Usually I play Control and such, but yeah, we'll break down. We'll get right down into it. So we're going to be breaking these down into, first of all, two huge categories: limited and constructed. I have more experience in constructed, but I have played a little bit of limited. And then we'll have three categories for those two big subsets, which will be competitive, niche, and trash. A lot of people do like a 1 through 5 or a 1 through 10 rating. I'm just going to try to go over each of the cards and why I think they might be good or bad or niche. And then we'll just go from there and we'll see how it goes. So first card here is Luminous Broodmoth, 4 CMC. Whenever a creature you control without flying dies, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a flying counter. This is a mythic. Pretty heavy. Artwork's pretty cool. I would say in constructed, there's not a lot of support for like insects or anything like that. None of the tribal stuff. It looks really okay for like mono white aggro type deal, like where they have Heliod's and stuff. It could get really annoying because even if you would shatter the sky, this Broodmoth would die, but everything else would resurrect. So I could feel like this is a really good like anti-board wipe, anti-control type strat, which doesn't seem terrible. I would put this in the slightly competitive category. I'm not sure at 4 CMC if it's low enough to the ground to really stick in aggro. In draft, it's going to be insane. In draft, it's definitely competitive. It's probably pack one, pick one, I'd even say. Like flyers have always been strong in draft, and if you have something that brings back all the flyers, this thing could be awesome. So I would say that it has a chance at constructed to be pretty competitive if aggro picks up, or if there's some synergy I'm missing between like this with Bant and like having a bunch of stuff coming back. But I think it could be pretty competitive. I like it so far, especially, but definitely in draft. So Cub Warden, 4 mana. Mutate. So Mutate's a new mechanic. It says if you cast the spells for its mutate cost, put it over or under target non-human creature you own. They mutate into the creature on top, plus all abilities from under it. So it like sort of gives you a weird way to cast the creature in a way to make really good synergies. In this case, it's a 3/5 lifelink. Whenever this creature mutates, create 2 1/1 cat creature tokens with lifelink. So that's pretty interesting. So like it could come down as a 3/5 if you have nothing else, but if you mutate it for 4, it's a little more restrictive on the colors. It's too white. It's really weird. This one's hard to analyze. I'd say in draft it's pretty nice because if there's not like really solid removal, I haven't seen a lot of the set yet. So if there's a lot of removal in draft and in constructed as well, it's going to be hard to really pinpoint the mutate's effectiveness, because if it dies as it's being mutated, then you lose a lot of value. If this thing goes unchecked, like if you're able to just mutate it and bam, and this goes for like all of the mutate. I won't try to break into this too much. This will be mutate as a general sort of breakdown, so we don't have to get into this discussion for every single mutate card. Kind of glad that we ran into it pretty early on. So I would say anything that can produce 2 more bodies, especially with lifelink and draft, can be very, very substantial. And it seems like it would do really good in limited. I'd probably call it a bomb in limited, like probably competitive. I don't know if I would. There might be some uncommons that are stronger than this in a pack one, pick one situation, but they would have to be pretty good. It also depends on how white is overall as a set. But it looks pretty strong. In constructed, I don't really see it standing out too much. 4 CMC is pretty steep, so I'd probably put this in the niche category almost, like niche slash maybe competitive, maybe trash. Like this one's sort of like weird. If they bring a lot of cat synergy, it'd be cool, but overall I'm not too excited about this card. Dranith Magistrate, 2 mana. Your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. This guy is a house. Like in limited, I'm not sure how much he'll stand out. Like 1/3 for 2 is not terrible. Like it's definitely better than a like what you would call a bear, which is just like a 2/2 for 2. Like just sort of a like not too impressive but not too awful type body for 2 mana. And depending on how the draft format goes, it seems like it could be useful. In constructed, I think that it's competitive. It's at least sideboard worthy, depending on like, you know, what people are going to be bringing in and out, how the meta shifts. But I think this could be competitive in constructed, and it could definitely be competitive in draft, depending on how much graveyard synergy there is. If not, it's just sort of a mediocre card. Like it can fill out your deck in limited, but nothing to be too impressed about him. I'm willing to see. I'm waiting to see how often he'll be brought in for sideboards and such, especially with like all the escape that there is in the current meta. It should shake up the format a little, at least. All right, next creature, Lava Brink Venturer. Moth is a very strong combo card. The Brood Moth, oh yeah, he's really good. I like how you doing, Bant for Life, by the way. We're doing a YouTube video as well, so I'm not responding as much to chat, like I won't be as quick about it, but we're trying to go through and do them all. It's gonna take a minute. Lava Brink Venturer, 3 mana. As it enters the battlefield, choose odd or even. Oh, so this is another one of those effects like that one creature. The one where like he can only be damaged by X CMC, where it's like a random number as he comes in or something. So choose odd or even. 0 is even. Lava Brink Venturer has protection from each converted mana cost of the chosen value. Ooh, that's interesting. And it's a 3/3 to boot. That's pretty interesting. But for 3 mana, you really have to do a lot in this meta. Like with how Magic has just gone into like sort of a power creep type dealio. Like where it something like we're talking Teferi like Time Raveler for 3 mana, right? You have to be like pretty strong. In limited, I could see it being really, really good because your opponent could have one big creature that's just sort of hosing you. And you could declare like, you know, that even or odd or whatever for the most amount of monsters they have if they're going wide. If it's tokens, it's 0, right? So even. So you could just block off a wall of token. So like I think he could have some sway in limited for sure. I think he's competitive in limited for 3. I don't know if I'd pack one, pick one him, depending on the uncommons and such that have a huge power level. But like, he seems okay. Infinite pinging, recycling. Yeah, but like, what's that got to do with anything, Lissa? Like, I don't get what you're saying. Like, this card doesn't really stop Cat Oven. They can still ping you directly. You don't have protection, he does. So like, it could protect you from Mayhem Devil. But yeah, it seems like it would be pretty interesting against certain strategies, but I don't think it's really great in constructed. Like it could be okay, but I don't know what it would replace in the current like mono white list or just in mid-range lists or anything else. It's interesting. It's a cool effect that they're exploring there. It reminds me of that other card in standard right now. But yeah, I think it's probably niche at best for constructed. And how's it going, Paper Bag? What's up? We got Mythos of Snap Dax, which is a pretty nice name. Pretty awesome. So 4 mana. Each player chooses an artifact, creature, enchantment, planeswalker from among the lands they control, then sacrifices the rest. Woo! If red or black was spent to cast the spell, you choose the permanents for each player instead. Holy moly. This is insane. Oof. This card's got to be competitive. I'm not sure about in draft because I don't know enough about draft to really make an analysis on this. Like, this is kind of a wazy, like kind of a wacky card. I tried to say like 3 words there at once because my mind is so blown about this card. This is definitely the coolest card I've seen so far of the set. It's my favorite so far. Holy moly. So it's going to be, what is this, like, what colors are these? Mardu? It's Mardu. You got a lot of good removal options, especially with white being able to take care of enchantments. You got Kronks, like there's, oh man, I'm already like brewing in my head about this. It's probably a list that I'll try to look for brewing together tomorrow. I'm glad that I have something to do. And how's it going, Dig Dug? How are you doing? But yeah, I would say I'm not sure how competitive it will be. It's really hard to tell how easy this will be to cast. It's also 4 mana. I mean, you can check your opponent's hand with like Agonizing Remorse to see if you can get it off and such. It's definitely crazy though. It's got to be competitive in some aspect. Like, I don't think we'll go throughout the whole format without seeing someone crack this. I'm excited for it. That's all I can say about it. I'd put it in the competitive / niche category, like right in between the two. I don't think it's trash. All right, moving along here. Fight as 1. So now we're into the uncommons. Might be like an X for mono white. Which one? This guy? Luminous? He's decent. We've already talked about him. If you mean Mythos? I don't know about Mythos. I don't think that has much to do with white. Mono white. The comparison. Yeah, the Broodmoth. Yeah, for sure. I think this one's going to be crazy, I think, a little bit. I'm not really sure. For 4 mana, it's like you can just exile this kid with like a D-Spark or something. Like, I don't know. Hard to say. Fight as 1. Choose one or both. For 1 mana instant. Target human creature you control gets 1/1 and indestructible until end of turn. Please don't come back, Feather. We didn't miss you. Target non-human creature you control gets 1/1 and gains indestructible until end of turn. Ah, okay, yeah, so definitely don't come back. Feather, please. I think this could be competitive if Feather's going to make a comeback. Please don't let it happen. I don't want it. In draft, it's probably like decent. I don't know if it's super competitive. It's like in between competitive and trash, depending on like what your deck shapes up to be. Anything that gives indestructible a combat trick this versatile, where it can turn the tide of 2 little fights that are happening on the field, super great in limited, and it could be really good in competitive. It just depends on how the because this could prevent like half a board wipe, right? If you go human and you have a non-human, bap, and then it's easy. You know, you just 2-for-1 your opponent also in standards, so this could see some play for sure. Flourishing Fox, 1 mana. Whenever you cycle another card, put a 1/1 counter on Flourishing Fox, cycling 1/1. Oh, this thing is awesome. I would say I always jump to limited because it's easier for me to see value, and it just pops out a little bit more. So something that can grow in draft seems pretty interesting. And then if you don't need it to grow, like if you notice your hand isn't going to be very good without it, this could help you hit a land drop. Because you can just discard and then draw. So it's just nice. It's very versatile. It's also a fox, which is pretty cool style points. I like the art a lot. Overall, I don't think this will be super duper competitive in standard. It could fit some niche decks maybe that are looking for a little bit of cycle to get maybe a bigger threat or to hit land drops. But and it could play into like stuff with non-human, like maybe you're looking for a fox, since a lot of the creatures right now in white might be human. So who knows? It could be a little competitive, but I'm not going to hold my breath on it. Definitely cool. The Huntmaster Liger, nice, 4 mana, mutate. Whenever this creature mutates, other creatures you control get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of times this creature has mutated. So, like, you have to have other effects that have already been mutated on this creature. This is trash. I'm pretty sure this is trash. Only because, like, it's such a, like, you would have to be very fortunate to not have your creature blown up after you mutate it once or twice. So it's like this creature is gonna get what, +2/+2? Like, I don't see it being great. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It doesn't seem very good. It's a cool name, but that's about it, I think. Even for a draft, like, I don't know. Like, we've seen better stuff already, but I mean, those are rares. This is an uncommon, so maybe in draft it could be a little bit better. But and it's like other creatures you control, even not even this creature. So, like, I don't know. It's definitely weird. Keensight Mentor, 3 mana, 1 white, colorless. Whenever it enters the battlefield, put a vigilance counter on target non-human creature you control. 2 mana, tap. Put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control with vigilance. Huh. It seems kind of expensive for what it's trying to do. And how's it going, Carcamus? Hope you're doing well, man. I mean, if you end up making a deck with a lot of vigilance creatures, it could be okay. But it's only a 1/4 for 3 mana. And you only get to give one other thing vigilance. Like, you'd have to have a solid 2-drop, like maybe Pridemate in standard. And it's like, I think you want to be doing more for 3 mana. Like, I think there are better cards right now. So I don't know. Probably for standard, I wouldn't, like, unless I'm just missing something like really huge, I'm not too excited about it for standard. It's probably like in between trash and niche for me. Not even close to competitive, really. And in draft, I could see it being like pretty niche, pretty okay. Like, it's good value to be able to give something else like a lot of like steam, a lot of power, and it can still block for you 1/4, and then it can block and put the counter on something. So, like, it can make combat interesting, but I don't think it pushes you over the top in draft either. I'd say this is just a mediocre card overall. Could be okay. It could be a little bit better in draft than it is in standard, and that's about it. Majestic, are you a corn? I don't know how to pronounce this. So 5 mana, mutate for 4. Vigilance, whenever this creature mutates, you gain 4 life. So it's way too expensive for standard for the most part. Like, we've got to think about creatures like Thragtusk for like 5 mana and stuff. Like, the power level for Magic's just gotten so high that to play in standard you have to be pretty good. But in draft, I could see this being okay just because, like, the life gain can push your opponents out of burn range, depending on how much burn red has in this set, like this card set specifically. Because how it breaks down is like metas eventually, you know, develop in anything, in standard and limited, etc. So, like, when Eldraine first came out, there's like a lot of mill and stuff, and then it turned into a really aggressive format, and it shifts, you know. And depending on what other cards the set has, the life gain could be way better than I think it is for draft. In standard, though, it's too slow, so I'd say it's trash in standard and probably niche in draft. I don't think it's too crazy. It says whenever this creature mutates, you gain 4 life. So in draft, if you mutate on it again, it's still the same creature, so you gain life again. So that's kind of crazy too. So, like, I guess the same could be said about this card now too. Like, maybe this is a little bit better than I thought, but I still don't know if it's super competitive. So yeah, that's something to consider, is the recursion on that ability, if I'm understanding how it works correctly. Splendor Mare, 3 mana, lifelink for 3/3 for 3 mana. That's already kind of good, especially for draft. When you cycle the mare, put a lifelink counter on target creature you control. This thing's actually pretty good. It's an elk unicorn, so that's pretty crazy. I don't think we have another elk unicorn in the history of Magic the Gathering. Maybe I'm crazy, but I've never heard of that before. There's also a bird goat coming up. I'm pretty excited about that one. But staying on task, I would say that this card has the chance to be competitive in standard, like a very slim chance. Again, it's 3 mana, so it really has to be crazy. But just the versatility on being able to cycle to hit a land drop, give one of your dudes lifelink, it could make the difference, you know? Just that gaining some life, especially in draft. This is definitely a fantastic card for draft. It's competitive. Like you'd wager over to white pretty easily if you see a couple of these. They are uncommon, so maybe you don't see them every game, but like every draft, but seems really, really good. I'm excited to see how it does. But yeah, I'd put it in between competitive. Like, I want to believe in it and say that it's competitive for standard, but it's so hard to analyze the power levels of standard, you know, when it all breaks down to it. So we'll try not to stick on one card too long. I'm trying to keep the flow up, you know, try to make it through all the cards here. Sanctuary Lockdown, 3 mana. Humans you control get 1/1. 2, tap 2 on human creatures you control. Tap target creature and opponent's controls. I mean, it seems like they're pushing a lot for like synergy between humans and non-humans, all of this stuff. It's probably not going to do so hot. Like, I'm probably going to give this 2 thumbs down. No, I'm just playing. It's not competitive though. I think it's trashed here for the most part. Unless you draft something really, really wonky, like it could be niche, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to be crazy. Unless they're just a bunch of humans that are escaping my mind, like I don't think this can be very, very competitive. I'm not sure. I'd have to see a list of all the humans in standard to make a super big analysis on it. But overall, not too excited about this card. Going to be moving along. Storm Wild Caprador. 3 mana, flying. If a 1/3. Bird Goat. If non-combat damage would be dealt to Stormwild Caprador, prevent that damage. Put a 1/1 counter on Stormwind Caprador for each 1 damage prevented this way. Ooh, that seems pretty strong, especially in draft. Like a flyer that grows if it blocks another flyer. Like if this blocks a 2 flyer without a combat trick, or if you have a combat trick to out combat trick them, this could get pretty wild. You can end up having a huge dude. It's also a non-human, so it has synergy with fight as 1. You can say that about anything. If it's a human, it has synergy. If it's a non-human, it has synergy. Kind of a pointless thing. But yeah, if they can't burn it down all the way, it gets pretty bad. Prevent that damage. If non-combat damage, never mind. What I just said was crazy. Okay. So it's different. It's more different than I thought it would be. So it's non-combat damage. Okay. Interesting. I mean, it could be sideboard tech, but I think if you're sideboard teching anything, it's still going to be like Cerulean Drake and other stuff if you're like Bant or in the other colors. Maybe if you're mono white against red, you might bring this in, but this thing gets thrashed by like bigger creatures, so I don't know. And an Embercleave, like, you know, so I don't know. I'd probably say it's niche at best. I don't think it's going to be crazy. Bird Goat definitely gives it some points, but in draft, it's a little... It depends on how fast the format is and how big the other flyers are. It could be very, very good or kind of meh, depending on how the format goes. Probably say that it's mediocre. I kind of say that mediocre in a way because you can't really, like the 3 categories that I've set up, which are trash, competitive, and niche. Sometimes there's like a gray area for some of the cards, and in draft, the gray area is kind of bigger. There's not as much of a power creep sort of in draft, you know what I mean? Like compared to standard, like a 3 mana card like this in standard, it's just not strong enough usually, right? So I don't know. I'm not too excited about it for standard, but it could open up some sideboard options or make drafts interesting. Going to be moving along so we don't stick to one card too long. Swallow Whole. 1 mana sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, tap an untapped creature you control. Exile tapped creature. Put a 1/1 counter on the creature tapped. Wait, put a 1/1 count. Exile target tapped creature. Put a 1/1 counter on the creature tapped to pay this spell's additional cost. What? My brain is breaking. Oh, okay. So I'm tapping down my own creature, and then I exile a target creature. Okay, now I understand. Okay. Ooh, this card's crazy. Okay, thank you guys for taking a second. How's it going, Flame of Loon? I haven't seen you in a minute. My schedule probably is kind of bonkers for you nowadays. But this is awesome. Yeah, Swallow Whole. I'm doing really well. We're just doing a YouTube video type thing right now, so I'm trying to pay attention to chat, but I'm also trying to get through these cards as well. But I appreciate you guys going out and being awesome, helping me out. So yeah, this is competitive for sure. This is like in limited, this is the best white card that I've seen so far, aside from maybe the Moth up top. That thing can kind of win a game too, but this is just insane. This is definitely going in a lot of decks. I'd say it's a little slow for standard depending on like what type of a deck you're doing, because mid-range is sort of weird and this is sort of where you want it. Unless you're white and you really need to remove taller creatures, like Cavalier of Thorns is kind of poking your side, stuff like that. Being able to answer something for 1 mana almost unconditionally, like you have to have a creature, right? And it can even be a token. Just being able to exile something like that is pretty crazy. Nice. Because exile is becoming more sought after with all of the like, you know, a Nex and all of this stuff where there's a punishment for just killing the creature. I think this is definitely going to be competitive. Definitely awesome. I like it. All right, Valiant Rescuer, 2 mana. Whenever you cycle another card for the first time each turn, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. I remember when we had the cycling deck, I think it was in standard. Like I remember it like back when Scarab God was around and such, where cycling was kind of a big thing. So it's 2 mana to cycle, which is a little expensive. Like we see the Fox up here costs 1 to cycle, but I can kind of understand where it's you know, it's 2 mana, it's a 3/1. In draft, I could see this being really strong. Like it's a little niche, I would say, in between niche and competitive, because if you can pump out tokens as you're cycling and trying to find bigger threats, especially if you have lands to cycle, it seems really, really nice. Like it's a nice cherry on top. And 2 for 3/1 means that it can trade up a lot of the times. It's sort of that weird, awkward thing where like 1-drops can trade with you, and other 2-drops might be able to, like, you know, have a big enough body, or a 3-drop where they can block this without dying. But combat tricks and all, like this guy could be pretty okay. In competitive, like standard, I don't know. I don't think so. It's probably niche, if not trash. It's between niche and trash instead of being in between competitive and niche. Competitive and niche being draft, trash and niche being for limited. Not too excited about it. It's kind of cool. Whatever. Will of the All Hunter, 2 mana instant. Target creature you control gets 2/2 until end of turn. If it's blocking instead, put 2 1/1 counters on it. And then cycling. Ooh, this card's pretty good. I don't know if it's good enough to be in standard, because combat tricks have sort of fallen out in standard aside from like Feather. And Feather, let's be honest, is going to use Fight as 1 and God's Willing. I think that's still in standard. Pretty sure. It might not be. But Yeah, this seems okay though. In limited, it's going to be competitive for sure. It's definitely a good combat trick. The fact that you get to put 2/1/1 counters on it if you're blocking and do a bigger swing back, if you're allowed to, is crazy. Like it rewards you for being defensive if you're waiting for the right moment to come back into the game. It rewards you for that, especially in draft. In constructed, it might be a little too slow. I don't see a lot of people wanting to run this. Um, Even the Pridemate decks with like lifelink and stuff, they don't really run a lot of combat tricks anymore. It's more like threat, 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 threat. Where's my devotion? I need Heliod online, so I'm not sure if it fits in that, but it's definitely good in draft. So, all right, next card, Blade Banish, 4 mana, exile target creature with power 4 or greater. So this is kind of interesting because it's always a weird trade-off when they compare like when you compare ones that do converted mana cost and power, like Epic Downfall and such. Like it gets very interesting with the removal. Unlike Epic Downfall, this is an instant though, so that's kind of nice. In draft, it's going to be pretty good. It depends on how fast the format is. If people are going low to the ground, pushing through, it could be very hard for this to see any value. It might be like a sideboard card if you're doing best 2 out of 3. But even so, like you probably take a risk at some point because this is just straight up removal. Remove a bomb for 4 mana. Unless that bomb has 3 power and it's pumping or whatever else. So very interesting. I'd say in standard, 4 mana is pretty steep for this type of an effect. So it's probably not going to be too competitive in standard. I would probably say it's trash in standard. There's just better removal options unless you're like mono white and there's just no other answer to Cavalier. Oh wait, this card right here that they just printed, Swallow Whole. You're just gonna run that instead of this for the most part. But I mean, if you see either of these in your draft, like if you don't see this because it's uncommon and you see this, you're gonna take that. So probably not for standard, trash and standard. I'd say competitive / niche for draft. Checkpoint Officer, 2 mana. 1/2, tap 2, tap target creature. We kind of have this built in for like Giant Slayer right now or Giant Killer. Like it's just a better card. So in standard, down. The only thing that I don't know if Giant Killer, I don't think it's a human, but there could be some human synergy. It's probably not worth thinking about. In draft, though, this can lock down a card. It's definitely awesome in draft, I would say. It's probably pretty competitive in draft. Like if it's 2 mana for a 1/2, you can block and then tap down something. Usually won't happen, but it could be niche. Like if your opponent's swinging in, they're leaving back a blocker. You can chump with this guy, tap something else because blocking doesn't require you to tap. It opens up for some really interesting plays anyway. And if anything, it's just tap down their biggest creature, and it's nice until you can get your Swallow Whole or your Blade Banish, pretty decent. So trash standard competitive draft. Coordinated Charge, 5 mana. Creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. 2 cycling. Eek. I mean, in limited, I could see it being okay because if you draw it late game, it's awesome, and you have a board presence, this could win you the game, especially if you're mono white for some reason. Usually draft, you go for 2 colors, so this is like generally speaking, this isn't always true. It depends on the set, of course. But aside from that, just cards that can do 2 things, and cycling is going to come up a lot in that aspect. And for me, I'm going to value it more than most because I love value. So cycling for 2. Draw a card. If it's early game and you're never going to be able to cast this anyway and you need a land drop, awesome. Creatures you control get +2/+1. That can end the game. So in limited, it's probably like niche. I'd say it's niche / mediocre. And how's it going, Echo? How are you doing? Not really. I just decided to do a card review here. I want to get some YouTube content up. So we're going to be on YouTube in a minute. Like not in a minute, probably in like 3 hours because it's taken me forever to get through this, but it's fine. Kind of chill with it being a long video and just kind of relaxing with it instead of trying to be stressed, I just decided to turn on the stream and the YouTube and just do it. But I hope you're doing well. So creatures you control, yeah, so like it's probably not going to be standard competitive. I don't see it. It's just too slow for 5 mana. So trash for standard, niche for limited. Day Squad Marshal, 4 mana. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white human token. For draft, this is great value. I mean, granted, it has to be for the rest of the set. I have to take into consideration other 4 mana cards. But at face value, I think this is pretty good for standard. I mean, for draft. For standard, seems a little too slow. Providing 2 bodies is nice, but you have to compare to, like, isn't like Heliod a 4-drop? So you have to compare to Heliod. So you're not going to quite make it, buddy. I don't think. It's a big sword, though. That is a huge sword. So yeah, draft awesome, standard not so much. Human support, I don't know. That's still probably not enough to make that other card good. Divine Arrow. Divine Arrow deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. We've had a couple of cards like this in draft before where you can deal 5 damage to target, or you give like target blocking creature 7/7 or whatever else to kind of do it up with. Like there's Gideon's, it's Gideon's something, like Gideon's Remorse or Gideon's, it's not Gideon's Triumph, I don't think. Maybe it is. But we've had cards like that that don't really do too well in standard for the most part. It just doesn't seem to do enough. It could be niche in standard, but even that's giving it a little too much credit, I think. I think it's just not strong enough for 2 mana. Like with white, you kind of look for removal that's very strong, that's specific. So like Devout Decree, for example, you're looking at a really strong card for sideboard. I don't think that this makes it even into sideboards for the most part. Like it could maybe patch up a few rough matchups here and there, but I don't think it's worth a slot in the 75. In draft, it's removal. Like 4 damage is still really good. You can't kill it when you want to. Like if it's a creature that's just sitting there with an effect that's harassing you and they're not swinging with it, it doesn't deal with that. Aside from that, though, in draft, I think this is still pretty competitive, if not a little borderline on the niche. But I think it's like, compared to what else white has for removal here, and we don't have too many cards to go through. I see Pacifism got a reprint here. It's nice because it's not an enchantment. It just bam, and then it's good, you know? It does its effect. If you throw a Pacifism on something, someone can remove it, especially if there's a sideboard opportunity. So like it's probably competitive in draft and not competitive in standard, and we'll go with that. Draneth Healer, 2 mana. Whenever you cycle a card, you gain 1 life. Cycling for 1. So in draft, this thing's pretty good. I'd say this is competitive. The artwork's kind of weird. Like you don't really see this with Magic too much. This is almost anime-esque a little bit, kind of delving out of a different zone, like into a different zone, like this glow, this shine effect. It's very interesting. You don't really see it too often. Yeah, new set happening. Yeah, we're just doing a set review, kind of chilling out for a bit, kind of taking it casually. I'm totally not too tired to do this right now. That's fine. But yeah, this guy's really, really awesome. How are you doing, Wes, by the way? If you guys like art and such, and Dota 2, you should check him out. Mostly Dota 2 nowadays, but he also types a lot. Whenever you cycle another card, you gain a life, cycling for 1. So this is a 2/2 for 2 no matter what. And it has an upside for both when it's on the field and if you need a land drop. Like cycling means you can pay 1 mana, chuck it, draw another card. So if you're looking for a certain card, or if this just isn't good enough late game, you can definitely pitch it and go with something else, which is nice. And the life gain can be very, very good in draft. Like it can be insane. It can really make the difference, because your opponent swings out, you gain life by cycling, you do a weird block, then like you come out of nowhere next turn, like you mutate a creature, you know, give all of your creatures XX, and then they just get blown out. So it can be really crazy. I'd say in limited, this is definitely a competitive card. For a 2-drop, it looks better than most of the other 2-drops I've seen in the set. And for standard, I could see it maybe finding a home somewhere. I would put it into the niche category for standard, though. Garrison Cat, 1 mana. When Garrison Cat dies, create a 1/1 white human creature token. It's cool. It's a cat. It's kind of neat artwork here. I'd say that's probably trash in both categories for the most part. Sadly, a 1/1 just doesn't do anything in limited for the most part. And even if it leaves a body behind, it's kind of meh. In standard, I could see it being a little more. We started the review with white. Yes, yeah, we're going left to right with it. Yep. So we still got a lot to go through. So yeah, trash in both categories. It just doesn't do enough. Maybe in mono white, but they're just better cards, I think, for 1-drops. So I don't know. I don't really like it too much. Helical Glider, 3 mana. When it enters the battlefield, your choice of a flying or first strike counter on it. Kind of interesting, but interesting doesn't make it good. It's a nightmare squirrel. So the creature type's awesome. But that's about it. Little guy's trying his best, but I think he's trash. He's trying real hard, but he's just gliding in on a trash can, man. Like in draft, it's a little better. It depends on how big the flyers are in draft. Like we have to see how big the flyers are in blue. So far, we've got like a 1/3, like, what was it? Like a bird goat? Yeah, a 1/3 bird goat. Like the bird goat blocks this. You know, I don't know if it's good. If a bird goat can block it out of the air. Yeah, probably just trash in both categories, but in limited, maybe a little more toward the niche side if you're just looking for flyers and you can pump all of them somehow. Could be interesting, but I don't think it's competitive for standard. It needs to do a lot more. If it was like 2 mana, maybe it could be okay. But even at 2 mana, I don't know if it would see play in standard. All right, Imposing Vantisar, 6 mana. Vigilance for 6/3, cycling 1. Trash. It's trash, I think, in both categories. Like, it just doesn't do enough. In draft, it could be a little more up in the air, but 3/6 for 6 mana, dude, come on. You got to give me at least like a 5/6, 4/6. It's almost like a vanilla creature for that price. Like, if I'm paying premium 6 mana, you got to do more than that for me, I think. So probably just trash in both. Being able to cycle it's kind of nice, but even then, it's still a trash can. Light of Hope. 1 mana, gain 1 life, destroy target enchantment, or 1/1 counter on target creature. This could see play in standard for sure. And what's up, Malcolm? How are you doing, man? There are so many squirrels where I live too. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, Light of Hope. So this is really competitive, I would say, in draft. At least as a sideboard card, even as a main deckable card. If you're on the fence and you're almost dead and you just need to gain life to blow out your opponent, if you have a creature that does something when you gain life, it's just nice being able to destroy target enchantment when pacifism, and blue probably has some 4 life. Yeah, that's what I meant. Gain 4 life. Sorry, I was thinking about the cycling card, that when you cycle a card you gain 1 life for some reason, I think, in my head. Like, there's a lot of new information like flooding in, so I'm trying to keep up with that. But yeah, put a 1/1 counter on target creature. So if anything, this can put a 1/1 counter on something. It can gain you 4 life if you're about to die, or destroying something like pacifism in draft. In draft, I would say that this is like very niche, like at the top of the niche category, pushing itself into competitive where it's just not a bad card to take anyway, I think, is where I would do for limited. In standard, you probably have better options like Return to Nature. It's not in the same colors, but like, you know, I guess against red, this is probably one of your best sideboard cards because A, it gains you 4 life for 1 mana, 2, it destroys an X, and then 3, you get to, you know, maybe make one of your creatures not die to one of their dudes, so it could be okay no matter what. So I'd say it's niche for standard, like it could fit in, and then it's niche, almost competitive for draft, I would say. Manned Serval, 2 mana, Vigilance Cat, trash, dumpster tier, garbage, full art, full name, trash. It's just a 1/4 for 2. In draft, this could be a little bit better just because it can wall off an opponent for a really long time, and you can attack if they don't have anything, so it's kind of nice in that sense. But I just don't think it does too much. It could be okay versus mono red, but eventually they just break through this, or they just lava coil it or something, so I don't know. I don't know if this is good. Pacifism, 2 mana. Enchanted creature, we know about pacifism and draft. It's pretty competitive. You usually pick up this anyway, even if there's a little bit of enchantment removal in the set. It's usually generally accepted as an okay removal card. You want other stuff, like you're going to want Swallow, Swallow Whole, and maybe even Blade Banish, depending on the meta for draft. But like, this isn't terrible. Like, you usually pick these up if you can for removal and draft. In standard, you know, it's been in standard forever and no one ever uses it, so it's trash for standard. That's already been done for me, basically. Pataga Tiger, 5 mana, cat, flying. When it enters the battlefield, target human you control gets 2/2 until end of turn. Standard trash. There's just not enough synergy for it. It's too slow for 5 mana. It's just not competitive for standard. It's not fast enough. For draft, it could be okay. It's a 3/4 flyer, which is okay in its own sense. And then it could give you the swing that you need to swing him with a human or something, maybe. Could favor you with a trade or push through some damage you normally couldn't get through, and then like you finish it off in the air with a pump to this guy later or something. With a different card, of course. So it could be okay for draft. I'd say that it's mediocre for draft. Like sort of in between niche and competitive, like you could pick it up if you really needed to fill in some holes. Perimeter Sergeant, 3 mana. When it attacks, other humans you control get +1/+0 until end of turn for 3 mana. This seems okay. If there's enough synergy for humans, it says other humans, so he only swings in as a 3/4, so you really need a lot across the board to make this worth it. In standard, it probably won't be competitive enough, but in draft, I could see it being okay. Like niche, like if you draft a lot of strong humans, it could be okay. This is just a 2 mana 3/1 bear type of deal, even though it's a cat. Bear comes from just being a vanilla creature. It's okay. Not competitive for standard. We've had a 1-drop that's a 3/1 or a 2/1 before. And even then, it's like, I don't know if that's even strong anymore. Kurt Ape, stuff like that. Like, it's just not. If you need creatures just to fill out creature count, if you're low on it, it's okay for draft, but overall trash tier for both. Snare Tactician for 3. Whenever you cycle a card, tap target creature and opponent's controls. For 2/3 for 3, it's a little niche. It's not going to be in standard, I don't think. Like, we're not going to see anything too competitive running this. A Giant Killer, if you want to tap something down, it seems better. Any lords? There's a like banner effect for 3 for humans right now. 3 humans get 1/1. This right here. Tap 2 untapped creatures. 2 untapped humans you control, tap target creature, but it's for 3 mana. You need that to be like 2 to even make it worth it, I would say. So overall trash tier for this. It could be niche in draft, but I still don't think it's great. Like, unless you're just struggling real hard for creatures and you have a lot of cycle in your deck, this guy probably isn't worth it. Solid Footing, 1 mana. Flash, enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets 1/1. So 1 for flash is pretty cool. As long as the enchanted creature has vigilance. Ooh, it assigns its combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. So this and this serval here, this is a wombo combo for draft, I would say. I'm not sure how it'll be for standard. It could make some of the wall decks that try to go with high alert and stuff a little weirder, like a little different. But even then, it doesn't give it the ability to attack because it has defenders, so probably not in the latter part of that. But the former part of it could be okay. Yeah, I mean, this combo could probably happen pretty easily with draft for sure. I'd say in draft, this is definitely a little niche, but even so, it could be really good. Niche on borderline of competitive, depending on like what you get. I like it a lot. I like this combo. Sorry for calling you trash, man. You're niche. Spontaneous Flight for 3. Target creature gets 2/2 until end of turn. Put a flying counter on it. So this gives something flying, and it can swing in that turn. This looks like Chandra almost. Very Chandra-esque. Really cool. So I like it. For standard, probably a little too slow. I wouldn't say it's competitive. The combat tricks really have to blow people out, like God's Willing. Fight, it can blow people out. This one up here. This is stronger than this, for example. for standard. But in limited, this could push you through for sure. You have something beefed up like a mutated creature, give it wings, it's good to go. So, Vulpikeet. The foxbird. What does the foxbird say? It says mutate for 3 mana. Flying. Whenever this creature mutates, put a 1/1 counter on it. So it's a 2/3 flyer for 4, if anything. And if you mutate it onto something else, it gets flying because this has flying. And then it gets a 1/1 counter. Standard, 4 mana seems pretty steep if you don't have a creature developed. I don't think it'll be crazy for standard. It's just too slow. The mutate effect doesn't win you the game. But yeah, I like the artwork a lot for sure. But other than that, like for limited, I could see it being competitive. Just period. Like just being able to mutate something, give it flying could make a really big difference. Plus it's a 2/3 flyer at worst case off the top if you have nothing. So it just doesn't seem terrible. In draft. In standard, I just don't think it's quite good enough. Like it's neat, but I don't think it'll cut it. So we're going to be moving on to blue. This will be the start of the blue section. We've got, to start out, we've got a Mythos of Illuna. I think that's an Illuna since the I is lower than the L's there, I believe. 4 mana. Create a token that's a copy of target permanent. If red-green was spent to cast the spell, instead create a token that's a copy of the permanent except the token has. Whenever this permanent enters the battlefield, if it's a creature, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. Alright, so this one's not as good as the white one for me. It's not as spicy, it's not as interesting, it's kind of okay. But you give me something that makes, like, the white one's just insane. Like, it's more fun for me. In draft, it's going to be kind of hard to go 3 colors, I think. Someone said something about tri-lands. I'm not sure what rarity those are, because I haven't really delved into it. I was kind of saving this set, you know what I mean, until all of it was done, kind of waiting for it, and then I get this, you know, nice release of getting to look at all of the cards, knowing that I don't have to wait the next day to see the next card, you know what I mean, because I'm one of those people that'll hit there with a refresh button, like in high school, dude, every day. Oh, new set's coming out, and like I just spam the reset button, you know. Now we have Reddit that tells us when anything's out, so I feel kind of spoiled, but that's off topic. Let's refocus. For limited, I don't really see this being crazy good. It's okay. You do get to create a copy of target permanent, which is pretty insane. That's not terrible, but we already have a lot of those effects, right? And in draft, like in limited, it's like if you're just splashing for one of the colors, like maybe red or green, and you have a lot of the tri-lands, maybe, but it would be super niche, you know. Like the stars would have to align for it to be good in draft, I think. Just creating a target creature. I wouldn't pack one, pick one it. If I was in blue X and it was like, oh, well, some of my creatures are strong, so on average this card's going to be better. You know, it just depends on the removal too. But yeah, I would say that it's niche at best in draft and probably niche in standard too. Like I don't see it being super crazy. We already have a lot of copy effects, and I think those ones are better than this one. Like Spark Double's pretty spicy. We've got Quasi, which has recursion, you know what I mean? Like, there's just better options, I think. So sadly, probably just niche / trash for standard as well. This one can copy your opponent's things. That's true. That is a good point, Neko. That is a good point. Makes it a little bit better. Yeah, I still think it would be niche though. I don't know. Let's move along though. I don't want to spend too much time on one card. Sea Dasher Octopus. So it's an octopus for 3, mutate for 2, which is pretty cheap. Flash. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This thing is fire. This thing's awesome. In draft, this could be insanely strong. Like a 2/2 creature with flash is awesome. If you mutate this onto a cheap flyer, it gets insane, right? you could just fly over, get card advantage, just wreck your opponent. Is Mutate flash as well? I believe so. Since the card itself has flash, you're able to mutate it at flash speed. Same deal if you have like Ley Line of Anticipation up. You would be able to mutate at instant speed, I believe, because you're still casting something. So if it says flash on it, in theory, you should be able to. That would be my guess. I would push at a 99.9%, like I'm sure of this assurance rate, if you will. So I would say in limited, this could be definitely competitive, like not even niche. It just seems good if you're in blue. Look at the art, it's so good for it too. It just has a fish. That's awesome. Good for him. Maybe it's his friend, right? But in standard, it could be good too. Just the fact that it has flash gives it a lot of push power. So in standard, I could see it being competitive / niche as well. Especially if you can construct a deck around that, have a really solid mana for that double blue, and you don't even need the double blue if you're not like casting it as a creature. It could be really good in flash decks. Could be. That doesn't fall off if you don't attack. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah, Glaz, I agree. So I would definitely give it competitive and competitive probably. Maybe niche competitive and standard, but you know, that's just me being safe. Shark Typhoon, 6 mana. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create an XX blue shark creature token with flying, where X is that card's converted mana cost. Cycling X2. When you cycle, create an XX. Oh, dude, that's cool. So if you can't quite pay out for the 6 or you want to do it at the end of your opponent's turn, with cycling, is it instant speed or sorcery speed? It's been so long for me. I think that it's instant speed, right? You're able to just cycle at the end of turns from what I can remember. But it's been since like Scarab God since I've visited that mechanic. I don't really play a lot of EDH or anything, so. Octopus that can move up to 25 miles an hour. That's pretty crazy. Watch out for this nut card. Yeah. But yeah, this thing looks crazy. This thing in draft, it seems pretty crazy. Like this can just take over the game. In draft, it is a bit slow, so it depends on if the draft format's going to be super aggro heavy or kind of like mid range or, you know, really slow. So I would say that it could be really competitive in draft is my guess. I don't think it'd be too slow because if anything, you can cycle it. Can't be bad. So yeah, it seems like a bomb for sure. I think it's competitive in draft. In standard, it might be a bit slow, but it has the greed level to really pay off if it goes unchecked. And that's saying something. Like there's a lot of enchantment hate in standard right now, and even in this draft format, from what we've seen, we've had a couple of answers to enchantments so far. The 1 mana destroy target enchantment or gain life, 4 life, or 1/1, something like that. So definitely an icebreaker in draft, and it could be okay. And I'd say it's niche in standard. I don't see it being super competitive, but I could see it being niche. Could fit the bill for something. Voracious Great Shark, 5 mana flash. Lots of flash creatures. When it enters the battlefield, counter target artifact or creature spell. It's thick. It's a 5/4. It's 5 mana. I mean, like, I think Mystic is still better for the most part. Frilled Mystic. It's just like a worse Frilled Mystic almost. Because Frilled Mystic just counters anything. So it's hard to compete with that in that spot. I guess if you need more bombs. In draft, I could see it being really good. Because you counter, like, draft, this is definitely competitive. This is a bomb. Just big boom. Crazy. So in draft is definitely competitive. In limited, I think it's going to be niche. I think Frilled Mystic's got it beat, so I'm not too excited about it, but we'll see. Archipelagor. Yeah, if I had reach, it'd be okay. I mean, it can counter Dream Trawler, but so can Frilled Mystic, so I don't know. So 7 mana, Leviathan mutate for 6, so almost the same price as its hard cast cost. Whenever this creature mutates, tap up to X target creatures, where X is the number of times this creature is mutated. Those creatures don't untap during their controller's next untap step. So in draft, this thing looks like a pretty big bomb. Like it at least gets to tap down one thing. It doesn't have flash. If it had flash, it would be slightly better, like way better. We are getting into the uncommons, so it's going to be a little harder for the power level to keep up, you know what I mean, compared to the mythics and rares that we've seen. So that's something to consider. But even so, like in draft, I could see this being niche / competitive. Like if you're really looking for a bomb in blue and you didn't grab any of the sick rares that we have here, I think it could be okay in draft. In standard, I think that it's just too slow. Like they're not going to let you mutate more than once or twice without doing something about it. So this doesn't seem like a big enough payoff for 6 mana at sorcery speed. I mean, it does let you, like, it's sort of like a sleep on wheels. Like you get to give 7 attack to whatever you go to mutate. So other than that, it's kind of meh. Not too excited about it. Avian Oddity, 4 mana, flying, 2/4, cycling for 3. Whenever you cycle it, put a flying counter on target creature you control. This is pretty okay. Standard, not so much. It doesn't seem strong enough for standard. Like we have to think about other 4-drops in the format, like Sphinx of Foresight, for example. But even so, in draft, I can see it being competitive. Like this is a super great card for draft. It's 2/4. Most of the flyers that we saw from white were like 2/2s, 1/3s with that bird goat or whatever it was. Bird squirrel, something like that. Nightmare squirrel. It beats out everything that we've seen so far for flyers aside from rares. What are you trying to brew tomorrow? Probably something around the Mythos, the white Mythos. I'm pretty excited about that, but we'll see how it goes. That's my favorite card so far. But yeah, in draft, I would say this is competitive. Like it's just good value. 2/4 flyer blocks a lot of what we've seen so far, and it cycles. If anything, if you just need the land dropper, if you want to make another dude a bigger flyer, you know, then this guy can. If going wide with flyers isn't an option, making one of your bigger guys a flyer is, and that's awesome about this card for draft. Boon of the Wishgiver, 6 mana, draw 4 cards or cycle for 1. Insane for draft. Like 6 mana, big payoff late game, or early game you can cycle for a land drop if you need it. So this is definitely a competitive for draft, I would say. You can blow people out. And if anything, you cycle it for 1. I love it. Standard, way too slow. Like we've got cards that draw you 2 cards at instant speed for standard for 6 mana. Like it's really important to keep that mana open most of the time. So I don't think it's going to be super competitive for standard. It'd be interesting, but I just think there are better options. Escape Protocol, 2 mana. Whenever you cycle a card, you may pay 1. When you do, exile target artifact or creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its own control. This is definitely niche. I would say in draft, it's really hard to make use of this because you would have to draft a lot of cycle, and then you would have to draft a lot of cards that benefit with getting flashed in and out. So it's like stars align. This could be okay in limited, but overall, I think it's a little too messy. So it's probably kind of in the trash / niche category, mostly leaning toward trash for draft. And in standard, you could make something really fun with it. It would be niche. I don't think it's super competitive though. Just because it's kind of hard to set up. It's an enchantment. People are already sideboarding in enchantment hate. So I don't know if it's a good strategy to practice. We do have blink decks already, and most of them do white, like blue-white. But it's like, then you have to add cycle creatures into the blink deck, and then where's your room for Elspeth Conquers Death? Where's your room for, like, you know, anything useful in the mirror, like agents and everything else? It's just hard, you know? Seems like it would flood your what you're trying to do. So I'd say niche in both categories, leaning heavily toward trash, like trash leaning into niche, I would say, for both. Ominous Seas for 2. Whenever you draw a card, put a foreshadow counter on Ominous Seas. Remove 8 foreshadow counters from Ominous Seas. Create an 8/8 blue Kraken creature token. So for 2 mana, pretty easy to set up. Cycling for 2, which is pretty neat. Like you can just cycle it if you need a land drop. I'd say this is pretty okay. I would say for draft, it's probably competitive. Doesn't seem terrible. It gives you an 8/8 eventually, which is pretty big. And if you have a lot of draw cards, like a lot of cycling in your deck anyway, you're going to get this thing ramping pretty quick. In standard, I don't think it's strong enough. Like you can interrupt this pretty easily. So I think in standard, it's kind of trash, but in draft, it could be okay. Mystical Subdual, 2 mana. Flash enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets -2/-0 and loses all abilities. In draft, I would say this is niche. If you're really stretching for that removal, like something to shut off an ability, it could be okay. But the rest of your draft would have to be pretty weak, or your other picks would have to be very garbage in order to consider this card. Like very underwhelming is the word that I was looking for. So I'd say it's very niche in draft. Like if you absolutely need some type of it can gain abilities in other ways. Mutating onto the creature won't give it new abilities. It can gain abilities in other ways. What? Huh, that's interesting. Huh. But yeah, anyway, in standard, I don't think this is good at all. And in draft, it could, if you didn't have anything else, it could be okay. Neutralize, 3 mana, counter target spell, cycle. This is actually really good. I would say that this is like subpar in draft and in limited for the most part. Like counter spells have sort of fallen out of the meta for the most part. Like, and what I mean by that is that traditional counters usually kind of fall out. You see a lot of bant decks bringing in counter spells post board, or like if they main deck a counter spell, it's going to be Mystical Dispute. You know what I mean? Like traditional counter spell decks like controls like you white have kind of fallen out of favor recently. Maybe that'll change, and if it does, maybe this is okay, like if you're just looking for threats. But most of the time, like the cycling here isn't going to really matter unless you really need to hit a land drop or you really need to hit an out for the current situation, like something that's already resolved. So in draft, I would say that this is like kind of competitive because it's a counter spell, and those are kind of nice in draft anyway. It's a little harsh on the mana colors, but that hasn't stopped anyone from taking a cancel in, you know, drafts before. But it's just what it is. It's a draft with an alternative effect that's kind of okay. In standard, I don't see it being too competitive just because we have counter spells now and we don't use them. Sinister Sabotage, for example, is probably better than this card, and that doesn't see play. So unless something drastically changes, we might see other counter spells being played. Probably not this one. Polywog, Symbiote. I butchered that. 2 mana, Frog. Each creature spell you cast costs 1 less to cast if it has Mutate. Ooh, that's interesting. Whenever you cast a creature spell, if it has Mutate, draw a card, then discard a card. This guy's really interesting for 2 mana. 1/3 is not terrible for a body. I'd say that it's niche for standard. It doesn't quite have the power level to like really carry us unless Mutate just takes off for some reason. And in draft, I could see it being niche just because like if you end up drafting a lot of Mutates, this could be really nice to cycle lands. So yeah, Joe, I just don't see it being good enough. Like even if you have cycle synergy, like you're gonna want to probably hold on to the counter spell anyway. It's just a weird thing to put cycling on, I feel. I don't know. You'd have to be getting a lot out of it. So I would say that this is niche in both categories and more toward competitive with draft, I would say, because you can set up some really nice synergy with that. Pouncing Shore Shark, 5 mana, mutate for 4. This has flash. Whenever this creature mutates, you may return target creature and opponent's controls to its owner's hand. So mutate for 4, so 1 cheaper than this, and it has flash, so you can just slap this on top of a creature and bounce in response. So this could be like a counter mutate type deal. So in standard, I could see this being niche depending on how big mutate picks up, like how much it picks up. And in draft, I think this is pretty competitive just because it can interrupt what your opponent wants to do. On top of that, it gives you a bounce effect every time you go to mutate. So if you have other flash creatures that can also mutate, which there have been a few that we've reviewed already, I could see this being really good. I'd say this is competitive in draft for sure, and interesting in standard. It could see a little bit of play maybe depending on how things evolve. or how things mutate. Renaissance Mission. I have no clue, dude. This is a weird word, and I'm slightly dyslexic. So, oof, this one's tough. Something mission, 4 mana. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card, cycling for 2. Ooh, this thing could be a beast in draft, dude. So in draft, this could be super competitive. Can you explain cycling? So you pay 2 mana at instant speed, discard this card, and then draw another one. That's cycling. The cycling cost can differ, though. There's been a cycling card, for example, up above, where you tap 1 blue, 1 colorless, and then X, and then you cycle, and then if whatever you did for X, you get like an XX like octopus token or something. So the cycling cost can vary, basically. And other than that, like, it's just discard a card, draw for the most part. So this mission, I would say that it's very good in draft. I'd say it's competitive. Like, just being able to draw a card is just insane. Now you might just die in draft before you can really get that developed, but if you're sort of like a little bit of a control deck, you get some flyers, whatever, you can draw some cards. In standard, I could see this picking up well, it's just a little too slow for standard, right? Like 4 mana. Even flash decks kind of want to just kill the opponent nowadays with Nightpack Ambusher instead of relying on drawing cards as a means to beat things out. Like Mono Blue Devotion kind of wanted this effect, but they wanted it for way cheaper. So I think in standard, it's just a little too slow. It's probably in the trash / like niche, like barely creeping into niche, maybe depending on the deck, but I don't think it'll see too much standard play, but in draft, it could see a lot. Wingspan Mentor. It does have cycling, though, the mission, so maybe it's a little better than I think. Because if you need something else, you can always discard and try to find it. Wingspan Mentor. 3 mana, human wizard. When it enters the battlefield, put a flying counter on target non-human creature you control. 3, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control with flying. Oof, so this could be really crazy in draft. This is like niche / competitive, depending on how your draft goes, because they're giving you a lot of flyers. Like there's quite a few here and there, especially blue and white so far. Usually those are the 2 main colors for flyers, from my knowledge. Like, what other colors do we have? Yeah, white. Yeah, usually black has some flyers, but they're usually weird demon things. So anyways, so I think this could be really competitive in draft. And in standard, this could see some play. It depends, like probably not, because for 3 mana, it has a delayed effect, plus it has to tap out. It's a little weird, right? So, plus it's weird balancing like humans and non-humans in a deck, but we'll see. Could be okay. Aegis Turtle, 1/05. I mean, if there's a mill deck, maybe it could be okay, but this thing's probably just a floating trash can. Like, I don't see it being competitive in either standard or draft. If you absolutely need creatures and you're just looking to stall in draft, maybe. In standard, they're just way better options. Definitely a trash can. Sorry, man. I anticipate an oldie but a goodie. I love this card personally. So in draft, it's definitely good. It's definitely competitive. If you don't need to, like, fill up with bombs or anything else, if you just need something to search for your win con with, to hit land drops, etc., it's just nice filtering. It's just always been decent. So for draft, competitive. For standard, it's niche. Like, sometimes people run it, sometimes people don't. Anticipate is legal and standard right now, I think. If not, it just rotated, and even prior to rotation, it wasn't ran in a lot of stuff. It was just kind of okay. So I'd say it's niche and standard, bordering toward competitive, depending on what filtering tools we want. And in draft, definitely decent, competitive even. Capture Sphere, 4 mana, flash enchant creature. I think this is a reprint. When it enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature. Enchanted creature doesn't untap. So in draft, I mean, it's removal. It's niche, I would say, because of the amount of enchantment hate that sometimes comes in the draft format. We've already seen a lot of that in white. There's a common that's really decent that removes enchantments. in standard, this is never going to see the light of day for the most part. Like, it's just, none of these cards have really ever made it. Pacifism, Capture Sphere, etc. It's just, there's just too much hate for it in the sideboard. And even main deck in best of one, sometimes people have answers to it. So, like, Teferi, I'm going to bounce my own creature now, thanks, bye. Like, you know, it's just not good enough. Convolute, I think this is a reprint as well. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 4. I mean, in a world where Quench, like, it's a weird in between of like Quench and Mana Leak and such, and it's just, in draft it can be okay, but late game, if you top deck it, it's not very good. So in draft, it's kind of niche. If you have nothing else and you just need a counter, it could be okay. Other than that, it's just not really going to fit the bill. And in standard, it's probably not going to see much play, I don't think. Even flash decks would rather just wait a turn to Frilled Mystic or something, or hold on to Quench or Mystical Dispute. It just doesn't do anything that our current counter spells don't already do better for the most part. This is a summary of this card. Christison? I don't know how to pronounce this. Christ, Asian. I don't know. 4 mana, crab. 1/6 flash. A trash can that you can flash into play. In all honesty, in draft, this could surprise some people. Something else to consider, like this thing being flash 1/6, and like the unicorn thing that I reviewed earlier, they're actually a little bit better with sturdy bodies, especially in draft for mutate targets, right? Because they might not be able to be removed too well. So that's something to consider. This could be a good mutate base, basically. You got to start looking at things in that way, especially in draft. So I'd say in limited, this is the guy probably looks better than he seems at first. Maybe not a flashy trash can. So probably niche, depending on if you need a base for mutate, but in standard, I don't see it seeing play. Dreamtail Herion. 5 mana, elemental bird. When this creature mutates, draw a card. Flying. This thing's amazing for draft. It's almost like worth it for standard, but not quite. It's 4 to mutate, and you get to draw a card. Doesn't have flash. If it had flash, maybe it would be a rare or something, and it'd be 1 less mana each way. But as it stands, like in draft, I would say this is competitive. This is just a good card because it's a flying 3/4, and then if you mutate it, it draws a card. If you don't, it's still a 3/4. And then if you do mutate it onto something else, like if you, for example, mutate onto this 4-drop, right? Then it becomes a what? Like a, it combines the toughness and whatnot, right? Or is it not quite like banding? I haven't really gotten it. Plus all on top, plus all the abilities from under it. So I think 1 status on top. So yeah, you would put this on top, so you would get a 3/4 that draws you a card, basically. Okay, that makes it less broken than I thought it was. Okay, now I understand. Even still, I think my ratings have been pretty okay up to this point. So this thing would survive long enough where you'd be able to flash it in and then mutate it on your turn, turn it into a flyer, draw a card. Kind of nice. Okay, but yeah, it's pretty good for draft, and it's not, I don't think it'll be great for standard. 3/4 for 5 is kind of terrible. So trash for standard, probably. Faucet Reader. 2 mana. Draw a card, then discard a card. 1/2. We've seen creatures like this before. Right, yeah, you choose which stat line. Yeah, it goes on top. Right. But it gets all of the abilities throughout. Basically, that's the thing. It has banding for abilities. Faucet Reader 2. Draw a card, then discard a card. 1/2. This seems pretty okay. For draft, I would say that this is pretty good just because it gives you card advantage, it blocks for you early, etc. Doesn't seem terrible. It can put pressure on. I would say for limited, it's pretty competitive, and for standard, it's probably just too slow, man. Like, we've already got the Sailor that can tap for 4 and draw a card without having to tap it. Can apply pressure to planeswalkers and stuff as well. Why is Glimmerbell here twice? Anyway, so yeah, it's okay. Say niche for standard / trash, and then competitive for draft. Glimmerbell 2. Flying, untap it for 2. This is okay. I would say for draft it's pretty good because it stops early pressure and you can mutate onto it. Like 1/3 might be able to survive. Gives it the flying tag for whatever you end up mutating it with. Yeah, it's definitely good mutate fodder. I would say in draft it's great for that. It's niche slash competitive if you need fodder for mutate. And then in standard, like maybe if the meta changes completely and we're all about mutate, maybe it could be okay with flying and whatnot, but I don't see it being too crazy for standard. Frostlinks 3. When it enters the battlefield, trap. Oh, so this is a reprint. So Frostlinks is awesome in draft. Like it's, depending on the draft format, of course, all things pending, pretty decent. Just 2/2 for 3 taps something down, and you can get in there. And yeah, it's just not terrible. I would say for draft, it's pretty competitive slash niche. Like maybe sometimes there are better creatures, but you can tap down their only flyer, swing in with your mutated flyer guy. You know, whatever happens. Okay. Standard, it doesn't see play now. It probably won't see play later. So, you know, it is what it is. Frost Veil Ambush, 5 mana, tap up to 2 target creatures. Those creatures don't untap during their controller's next end step, cycling for 1. Draft, I'd say this is pretty competitive. Nothing bad about something that cycles for 1 mana and can blow the opponent out. You can tap them down before they attack and then swing them with your own creatures, and then they don't get to untap with them to pressure you next turn either. So it's sort of like a better sleep almost. Well, not really. Sleep can put all of them to sleep, but this is like a better mini sleep. Let's call it a nap. It's a better nap. Okay. Frostvale nap. So I'd say in draft it's pretty competitive. Standard, probably not so much. 5 mana is quite a bit to tap down in a world where Mystical Dispute exists, so, and where people are main decking it, so say trash for standard, competitive for draft. Glimmerbell again, we've already seen you, buddy. Gust of Wind, 4 mana. The spell costs 2 less to cast if you control a creature with flying. So 2 mana. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, draw a card. This is pretty insane for draft. It's sorcery speed. Which makes it different from, like, you know, what's that card called? It was super big. Run Away Together. There we go. I got there. Run Away Together. It's like that, but more conditional, but you get to draw a card. So it's kind of nice because you get to bounce something. Well, it's sort of like that, but not really. Just bear with me for a second. So like it's bounce, and it can do really. What happens if you bounce a mutated creature? Do you bounce all of it? No, you just bounce the top layer probably, right? So you can make mutate pile fall apart, I think. Or is it one creature? I wonder how that works, dude. Ooh, that's a spicy question. Anyways, in limited, I could see this being really good because you probably have flyers if you take this anyway. It resolves as a new creature. So like when I bounce it, it all goes to their hand. They all come back as individual creatures. They both go to hand. That's crazy. So all of them would go to hand. That's crazy. Well, I mean, still, you can make them cast it all again, I guess. So if you destroy it, then they all die too. That's a flicker effect. Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to see. We'll definitely be able to test it tomorrow anyway, but yeah. So anyway, back to the point here. The one I mentioned. Yeah. Yeah, it could go either way. I mean, Glass thinks pretty highly of the they all would bounce since they count as one creature now. It makes sense too. It's just that normally with Magic, the layers are usually so like, we're so used to if you blow this thing up, everything underneath it goes away. So like, I don't know. It's crazy to try to stem away from that after so many years, but it'll be interesting. It'll be fun. But yeah, anyway, Gust of Wind, probably niche, if not trash for standard, just because it's too slow. Like 2 mana, you have to have a flyer, etc. You get to draw a card, you get to return something. It's target non-land, so it could be an enchantment, so you can counter it. In draft, I see it being more competitive, though. Definitely competitive for draft. Just being able to reset something is nice. Hampering Snare. 2 mana. Creatures your opponents control get -2, -0 until end of turn, cycling for 2. Seems okay for draft. I would say it's niche slash competitive for draft. Mostly niche though, because like if you need fillers just for combat tricks, it's fine. And then you can cycle it if it's not useful. They go to the exile or graveyard. Okay, nice, Galaz. So it's all just banded together. Okay, I gotcha. That makes sense. But yeah, I would say for standard, this is way too slow unless we're going back to the fog days or something. It could be okay. Keep safe for 2. Counter target spell that targets a permanent you control, draw a card. Wow. That's actually insane. Holy moly. This thing's like, I love this card. This is my favorite. This owl is just on a one-way ticket to Pogtown, and he's not coming back. This is crazy. Dude, for 2 mana, this is not terrible. I mean, you have to compare it to, like, Negate, which can stop a Planeswalker from resolving. This only protects your things, right? It doesn't stop you from preventing... It doesn't stop the opponent from presenting you with a threat. So it's probably going to go in niche in both categories. Because it's such a powerful effect if you get to go with it. Like, you know, if you get it off, but if you don't, and you're just waiting for your opponent to do something to counter what you're trying to do, and they're actually developing their own threats, it's way worse. So I'd say it's niche for both, sadly, but I love it. It's definitely one of my favorite cards. Of One Mind, 3 mana. The spell costs 2 less to cast if you control a human creature and a non-human creature. Draw 2 cards. So for 1 mana, I get to draw 2. This is like a divination with an upside. So for limited, definitely like competitive, I would say maybe, depending on how fast the format is. Really cool art too, by the way. I like this card a lot. It's just cool. Nice value, nice card, nice art, nice colors. Really like the blue. But yeah, in standard, I'm not so sure. Like controlling a human and a non-human and then casting it for 1 seems like a huge payoff, but it seems a little niche. The only difference Mutate has to auras is if they respond to a creature, you are mutating it to you. You get to keep the creature you paid the mutate cost for. Because it's still coming in as a creature or something. Huh. You have to wait for it to resolve and then you have to kill it. So you kill them both. If I'm understanding that correctly, Glass. Yeah, so for anyone watching the YouTube video, I've got my Twitch chat going too, and we're just talking here and there. I'm streaming this as we... Phase Dolphin. So 3 mana, whenever Phase Dolphin attacks, another target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn for 3 mana Elemental Whale. This could be a really interesting, like, mutate fodder, because it gives a really interesting effect. So in draft, I could see it being interesting niche. In standard, probably not so competitive. Startling Development, 2 mana. Until end of turn, target creature becomes a blue serpent with base power and toughness 4/4, cycling for 1. I mean, in draft and competitive, it could be a little competitive. I would say, like, for combat tricks, there seem to be better ones in, like, white here and there, like giving something indestructible, etc. But being able to cycle this for 1, and then being able to finish someone off, like, a 4/4 toughness, like, during the damage steps. So, like, maybe you have a flyer that's, like, a 2/3 or something, they didn't block it, or whatever else, you know, it's a 1/1 that snuck by. You can do a 4/4 hit and maybe push through. Like, maybe, like, it's almost like it has trample, but not really, like fake trample. But other than that, I don't see it being very good. I'd say it's very niche. In standard, I don't see it being very good either. So, Thieving Otter, 3 mana Otter. Whenever it deals damage to an opponent, draw a card. I mean, for 3 mana, dude, this guy seems okay. Like, we've seen the Thief that gets to draw a card and stuff, and he was really popular in draft. So this guy's probably competitive in draft. Standard, probably a little too slow. Something that just dies to a shock / Bone Crusher for 3 mana. Seems kind of bad, man, but maybe if the meta changes a bit. I just don't see it being super great for standard right now. Wingfold Petron. Terrion? Maybe it's Terrion. Maybe the P is silent. Like Terry. Like the Terramander. So 6 mana when it enters the battlefield. It enters the battlefield with your choice of a flying or hexproof counter on it, 3/6. Could be really interesting for mutate fodder, but at that point it's so late in the game, I don't know. It's like 6 mana, so like this mutate base is at least 3. You know what I'm saying? So it feels a little too slow both for constructed and draft. It could be more viable for draft, but definitely trash in standard. So that'll be it for the blue section there. Alright, so to say the least, this Ikoria review took way longer than I thought it would. I'm still not all the way through it. We stopped in multicolor last night, and then I decided to call it a night because I needed to get ready for the early access event launching in a bit. So it's just way more of a time sink than I thought. Next time I'm gonna be way more prepared. So this will cover white and blue, and then we'll do another, probably 2 more videos to kind of break it down a little bit more. That way, depending on how long they are, you know, each of them will have the correct title, you know, like white, blue sections, and then this one covers this, and they'll all be on a playlist in YouTube that'll be pretty easy to find. So once again, thank you guys for understanding. Hope you guys are enjoying the set review, and I'm going to be trying to do more stuff like this in the future for Magic. So really appreciate the help.